Dead by Evil, Resident Daylight. Whichever way you want to combine the names, the crossover is happening. So, a couple days ago, they announced the 5th anniversary chapter for Dead by Daylight will be Resident Evil to coincide with Resident Evil's 25th anniversary. So, even though I can't actually record Dead by Daylight right now, I still kind of wanted to talk about it, even if I'm not particularly knowledgeable about Resident Evil. So, let's get into it. So, to make this easy, I'm going to start off with the easy part, the survivors. So, I'm pretty sure that we're getting a Stranger Things styled chapter where we've got 2 survivors and 1 killer. I'll talk about the killer later. For the 2 survivors, the big names you hear are Chris and Jill versus Claire and Leon. And although I do think that Chris and Jill have more straight-up cosmetic options, again, not terribly familiar with Resident Evil as a whole, but just off of what I know, I do think that Claire and Leon are going to be the selected duo, unless they mix and match with Chris and Claire. The reason I'm so sure that Claire will be there is because apparently after the reveal on the Resident Evil stream, Matthew Coate closed out his little segment by quoting Claire. I don't exactly believe in coincidences when it comes to this kind of thing. However, regardless of which duo they pick, the other duo will most certainly be available as legendary skins, which were introduced with the Silent Hill chapter. Honestly, I think that it's a great way to expand the, sort of soft expand the chapter so that you can get more fan favorites in. And chances are you're not just going to get the 2. Like, other probable legendaries would include Ada, Carlos, Ashley from Resident Evil 4, maybe even Ethan Winters from the newer games. But either way, I do look forward to seeing which duo they pick, and I feel like which duo they pick will heavily influence which killer is picked as well. And speaking of killers, there are so many good options. Like, I do not envy whoever has to make the final call. Now, you've got a few people saying, oh, there might be 2 killers because it's Dead by Daylight's 5th anniversary and Resident Evil is such a big franchise. But considering the absolute disaster that Trickster, Twins, and to a lesser extent The Blight have been, I'm doubtful of there being more than 1 killer, just because they've been having a really rough time of it lately. So let's go over some of the candidates, ranging from, let's just go and start with the 2 most likely options. Mr. X and Nemesis. Let's start with Mr. X. Mr. X is a legacy character from the original Resident Evil 2 who's been enjoying a huge surge in popularity thanks to Resident Evil 2's remake. He doesn't really need to be overly nerfed. In fact, Big Stompy Man is very much within the basic rules of killer for Dead by Daylight. However, he's still got enough menace to work. He's known for breaking through walls. He's big, he's stompy, he can be slightly sneaky. I think that he would honestly just be a really great pick. Additionally, he's generic enough that you could easily legendary other characters onto him. You could legendary Nemesis onto him. You could legendary the original Tyrant onto him. You could legendary, some of the other variant Mr. XT00s onto him. Okay, that might be a bit of a stretch. But yeah, he would just be a great base character to have. And, he could be a lot of fun. The other big, very likely option is Nemesis, who is basically Mr. X, but with a lot more stuff going on, and a lot uglier. So the big thing with Nemesis, and the biggest reason I'd be kind of against having Nemesis as the base character, is because regardless of if you give him his rocket launcher or if you give him his tentacles, he's just not going to flow as well for legendaries, which, granted, that should be a minor concern, but it's still worth thinking about. As far as, Nemesis himself goes, yes, he is absolutely the most iconic of the Pursuers. He's even called the Pursuer, if I recall correctly, which would be a great name for him. And yeah, just there's not really much else to say. The only issue with Nemesis is his weapons. Nemesis without his rocket launcher would be like Jason without his machete. Sure, it's doable, but you'd feel robbed. It's just so iconic to him. Anyways, moving on to some slightly less likely candidates, there's Birkin. I think Birkin is actually a lot stronger candidate than people are giving him credit for. He's got the emotional side, which Dead by Daylight's entity likes. He's big, he's scary, he's got the body mutation horror thing going on, so he's very aesthetically Resident Evil. And I'm not entirely sure what his power would be, but, I'm sure that they could come up with something involving the mutation. Perhaps having it accelerate as the trial goes on or something. Additionally, it's even though it'd be fun to punch people with Mr. X, it's not like he's weaponless. Birkin's got a crowbar he can hit you with. So there you go. There's your weapon customization. Moving on from Birkin, the other big names I'm hearing thrown around are Wesker, who, just straight up, he's too anime. He's too much of a battle shonen character for Dead by Daylight. Super speed, guns, edgy. Yeah, no. And Jack Baker. I hear so many people say that Jack Baker should be the killer. I really don't want him to be the killer for this chapter. Not because I don't think that they can make him interesting. They 100% could make him interesting as far as power goes. In fact, his power probably has more room to be versatile than any other character in this list so far, but the fact of the matter is, he's a redneck hillbilly with family issues, with an association with chainsaws. We already have two killers that are pretty much fit that exactly. We don't need a third. I'm sorry, Jack Baker fans. We really don't need a third. As for more unlikely candidates, there's always, the likes of Lady Dimitrescu, who, I hope I pronounced that name right. I doubt that she'll be the killer because, first of all, her game's not even out right now, and it'll still be, like a month old, so her DLC bio would obviously have spoilers for Resident Evil 8 Village, so I really don't see her happening. And in addition, if Resident Evil 8 somehow ends up being hated by Resident Evil fans, it would really bite for the Resident Evil rep in Dead by Daylight to be the character from that game. As much as I like her, it's just not a good option. She could be a legendary on someone, though. Maybe Plague, or if they go with Mr. X, I could see it being a Mr. X legendary with... That is, if they're ever willing to give a legendary skin unique sounds. So the other two unlikely candidates that I'm hearing thrown around a little bit here and there are Ooze Rachel from the spin-off series Revelations, I think? I don't really know too much. I think that was just something I've seen like once or twice. And Lisa Trevor from the Resident Evil 1 remake. Now, she's an interesting choice, but I really, really, really doubt that she's going to be the killer. I mean, I'm just speaking from the, quote, so casual that I'm barely even an RE fan, unquote, perspective. But I had to look her up, and while it's true that she's got a tragic story and could very easily be snagged by the entity, in the end, I think a lot of what makes her work is more in regards to her backstory. I don't know, I haven't even seen gameplay of her, so I shouldn't really be talking that much about her, but I think that if they wanted to go for someone with family issues for the killer, Birkin's the best bet. And outside of Birkin, I'm hoping for Mr. X, But I'm honestly expecting Nemesis. Nemesis will bring in the big bucks, and we know that that's what they're going for. Final part of any given chapter is the map. And I only really see two options here. The Spencer Mansion from Resident Evil 1, or the Raccoon City Police Department from Resident Evil 2. We could also get some of the city streets or something. But yeah, map-wise, I don't think that there's a whole lot of options, but I do think that all of them are very good. With the Raccoon City Police Department, you get a lot of that. Either way, we're looking at a map that has a lot of indoors elements to it. But if you go with the Raccoon City Police Department, that could just be part of a full-blown Raccoon City map, whereas the Spencer Mansion would be more of your mansion indoor map, which I know people don't really like indoor maps, but, they're fun sometimes if they're not poorly designed. Midwich. Anyway, so yeah, that just about wraps up my thoughts overall. I think that I'm pretty sure that the survivors are going to be Claire and Leon. For the killer, I'm not entirely sure. I think that, I know I said that survivors would probably dictate the killer, but thinking back on it, probably not. My prediction, I have two predictions. Either A, it'll be just a full-blown Resident Evil 2 chapter with the RPD, Leon, Claire, and Mr. X, or they will pull a Silent Hill chapter and pull from each of the games in the original trilogy. In this case, the map from 1, again, in this case the Spencer Mansion, the survivors from 2, Claire and Leon. Again, we could very easily see Chris over Leon, but I feel like thanks to Coat, Claire is half confirmed. And Nemesis as the killer from Resident Evil 3. Either way, there's going to be a boatload of legendary skins, and we'll see if I'm proven completely wrong on any of this, or all of this, You never know. For all we know, we could get, Ustanak. But, thanks to listening to my weird, insane rambling. Have a wonderful rest of your day, night, whatever time you're watching this. Oh, and if you're interested in the terrible pseudo-Resident Evil-y gameplay that I used as background footage, I will leave links to the gameplay mods and the map pack down below.